guns go crack. And early Sunday morning there's a body on his back. And if the body...
I think you have to ask yourself, why did the European Union and European unity arrive at all, considering this continent has seen 300, 400, 500 years of permanent war. Europeans who actually look with disdain at other people waging wars have to remember they didn't wage wars for a year. They waged 30 years war, 100 years war. 100 years war, you war for 9 months, then you go back to harvest and stop for a while, and you come back to the warfare. It has known that. That is what class division and the transformation from feudalism to capitalism, it produced a lot of wars. But how come these warring countries suddenly found after the Second World War they needed peace? It's not because imperialism has become peace lover. You know, as Chairman Mao used to say, imperialists have honey on their lips and murder in their hearts. They constantly do that. They haven't become Buddhas. They still carry butcher's knives on them, and that's what their true characteristic. They did that because European powers, after the Second World War, basically, without exception, including Britain, lay prostrate. The two powers that emerged from the Second World War that were most prominent on the capitalist side were the United States of America, and on the socialist side were the Soviet Union and a powerful bloc of socialist countries, first in Eastern and Central Europe, and then joined in the Far East by first the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and then People's Republic of China, then Vietnam, etc. All these countries became, and it shook imperialism to its very foundations. Now, Churchill, as you know, was a horrible reactionary. He was pro-fascist, although he's since then been branded as a great fighter against fascism. And nothing like that would wear with anybody who's well informed about the history of British capitalism and of Churchill in particular. If Churchill, if Churchill made the statement at in his speech at the Zurich University in 1946 that we will build a kind of United States of Europe. In this way, only will hundreds of millions of toilers. Now, toilers are not people who came to Churchill's mind as a person. Hundreds of millions. I mean, he was an enemy of the oppressed people, enemy of rival imperialists, and an enemy of the British working class. Of that, there cannot be that. But we will build hundreds of millions of toilers be able to regain the simple joys and hopes which make life worth living. It's the same Churchill who said that I can't see any harm being caused by elimination of the Native Americans because a stronger race has taken their place. And he had similar views on the Australian Aborigines. He had the same views of the Arabs, who could be gassed because they are inferior people and they can be dispensed with. I mean, that was his concern for humanity and for the toilers of the world. But basically, he was somebody who comes out of the Yalta Conference and feels much shrunken and belittled by the fact that on the one hand, the eagle, and on the other one, the Russian bear, are deciding everything, and he, the little British donkey, had to sit in the middle. These are his words, not mine. Had to look around and just be satisfied with what was taking place. So he wanted, he took Britain into the Second World War to save the British Empire. Its result was disastrous from that point of view. Because not only the Soviet Union, having become triumphant, wanted national liberation, America wanted to for its own purposes, because unless the old European powers, principally Britain and France, were expelled from the colonies, America could not get a foothold. So they put pressure on decolonization. So it was disastrous for Britain and for France as far as colonies were concerned. So that couldn't be done. So his idea was Europe should have a voice in world affairs. And he was in favor of the United States of Europe. But at the last moment, he hedged his bets. And the British ruling class hedged its bets, including, of course, the Labour Party when it was in power. They thought they could carve out a better future for themselves in being the second in command to the United States of America. or as Macmillan said, we shall be the Greeks to their Romans, right? That was their idea. But the United States position has been simply this. Europe must be united as long as it is united under America's economic, political, and military leadership. If it ever aspired to being independent or creating a European army or any such thing, then they would do anything to frustrate it. So far, the Americans have succeeded in that. And therefore, Americans want Britain to stay in the European Union. European Union was formed basically as an anti-Soviet alliance and a place to make Europe much more prosperous, of which the biggest beneficiary was Germany. Germany was a fascist power which had been defeated. It should have been treated like a defeated power, but it was given special status because the only way they could fight it against the Soviet Union, Eastern and Central European countries, especially the GDR, was to actually support Germany. They did the same in Japan. So the defeated powers, the principal fascist powers, really got the first-class treatment. Whereas countries that were part of the alliance, the Soviet Union, China, DPRK, faced the worst possible hostility. So that's the European Union. And America still wants Britain to be there, because Britain there is holding the brief for the United States of America. And I think most comrades here would agree, the United States of imperialism is the number one enemy of the people of the world, if you can make a general statement.
A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction.
Most comrades here would agree, the United States of imperialism is the number one enemy of the people of the world, if you can make a general statement. Of course, there are exceptions to that, but that is what's happened. If that is the case, we have a duty that Britain disengages from it and is therefore able to make that powerful alliance of the European Union and the United States of America. And there is a complete coalescence between the European Union's economic side and NATO. I know people say there are some members of the European Union who are not members of the NATO and the other way around. Most of them are members of the European Union as well as NATO. And anything that weakens the European Union will cause the weakening of NATO as well. Particularly, notwithstanding the fact that we live in imperialist countries, in most of the countries of Europe, European people are fed up to their back teeth with wars that are being waged by their ruling classes. Opinion poll after opinion poll are against the Iraq war, against the Afghan war, against the Syrian war. And therefore, really, the imperialists, by acting together, are able to sustain an idea of there is a united front, we have to fight against terrorism and all the rest of it. Singly, it would be much, much more difficult, and we are in favor of it. And as Lenin never ceased to point out, that the struggle of the proletariat in the imperialist countries for socialism and for its own social emancipation would be a sham and a humbug unless the proletarians of imperialist countries were absolutely united with the oppressed people who are fighting for national liberation against their own imperialist ruling class. And that is something that has been lost. One of the things that brought down and liquidated the Second International was this moving away from internationalism to nationalism. And we have a duty, at least 100 years later, unless we're really slow learners, to learn that lesson. And unless actually we stand by the principle of internationalism, which is not a rhetorical flourish, it is something which is in our own interest. The bourgeoisie can be nationalist, the proletarian can never be nationalist. We have to be internationalist. But internationalism must not express in a way which is the internationalism of the bourgeoisie, that we line behind it to stay in the European Union to do that. I have a lot of respect for Comrade Harpal, but I think, as Ella pointed out, there is going to be no European Communist Party. The European Communist Party will only come when there's a revolutionary movement all over the place and some kind of third international comes into being. But chances for that are rare and very few. When that time comes, we'll be able to do that. The question now is, there is a Brexit campaign. I think it was Wilf who asked the question, why is it happening now? He knows the answer very well why it's happening. Because imperialism is in a crisis. If everything was going well, if Germany was doing well, and it was not the only country doing well in the European Union, every other country was doing, Greece was doing, there will be no crisis. There is a crisis. The world markets are saturated. There are no profitable opportunities for investment. There's no shortage of capital. The problem is there is too much capital chasing too few opportunities for profitable investment. They cannot sell the goods. So what are they doing? They are actually investing in speculative activity. Now, speculative activity does not create wealth. Wealth is created in production. As Comrade Kenna will tell you, it's only the working class that creates surplus value on which the bourgeoisie lives. So if surplus value is not created, they're all cheating on each other. If JP Morgan won and HSBC lost, none of us will shed a tear. But that's not it. The way the capitalist system works, they bring the whole house down and cause disaster to everybody. That's precisely why the answer is not just the bankruptcy of a few banks, which I would actually like to see. I think the law of the market should operate. Those who are not profitable should go out of business. But they don't. You go out of business. The banks do not go out of business. The banks flourish. You pay the money because they have lost money. And you lose your house, you are not able to pay your money. There's a crisis of capitalism, and in this crisis, the ruling classes themselves get divided. The British ruling class has never actually been able to decide whether it is on America's side or it is on Europe's side. They want to hedge their bets. Now, the time has come to make up its mind, and they are divided. I very much hope it doesn't matter that they're xenophobes. It doesn't matter they're Islamophobes. It doesn't matter that they're anti-communists. As long as they vote to get out of the European Union, they will realize the day after what bloody fools they have been. You know, they're acting as colossi on the stage. They're insignificant people. Michael Gove, the buffoon Boris Mayer, Johnson, and various other people. And they're really pursuing a completely different agenda. Some of them simply want to embarrass Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. I mean, it's hilarious. The press and the ruling class is so concerned with Jeremy's left-wingism. They're bloody fools. They do not realize what they're fighting against. But anyway, they were so concerned that on the May Day march, a certain political organization, the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninists, had a terrific presence. They went there with their banners. So they associated Jeremy Corbyn with our banners. Yes, he has almost looked as though he's the new leader of the CPGB-ML. The Telegraph on page 4 had a picture of our banner with CPGB-ML. The Times had a picture of our banner but no CPGB-ML. The Fox News broadcast our comrades marching. And believe it or not, you can have really friends in strange places. The Times of Israel actually mentioned the full name of our party in reporting the demonstration because they are following a limited agenda. What they cannot see is that they are really giving publicity to their real enemies. Insignificant though these enemies may be at the moment. So that's what they're doing. But these people will realize once there is a Brexit that they made a mistake, but then it'll be too late. I think Ella is quite right. This Brexit vote in Britain cannot be ignored. Britain is not Ireland. Britain is not anything else. And it's not a small thing. It's not about this and that provision of the Lisbon Treaty. It's about the very membership of Britain. If there is a Brexit vote, it will have to be implemented. There's no way it cannot be implemented. That's my view. Comrade Eric Levy has made the point that if Britain comes out of the European Union, there would be a most reactionary alliance between America and Britain. Well, is that worse than the most reactionary alliance between America and the European Union of which Britain is a part? I mean, it's a much, much bigger alliance. What's more, they are doing everything to undermine not only China and Russia, but their own working class. The TTIP that they're about to sign, It will even have a provision for dispute settlement. A private company can take the government to court if the government in any way stands in the way of the profitability of the multinational corporation. People talk about workers' rights, but weigh against those workers' rights that for the moment the European Union feels it ought to grant to the workers, weigh against it the provision that you cannot provide services except through the market. You know, privatization is the main theme of the European Union. In this country, in the European Union, and everywhere in the world. Imperialism does not recognize any other human right than that of one human being to exploit another and one nation to exploit another. That is the only human right they have. And they're increasingly making it more and more difficult for these services to be provided on the basis of state being the provider of these services. I think Kathy, when she spoke, she really uttered the great truth that staying in Europe would strengthen reaction. It would strengthen British imperialism. Now, there are a lot of people, and this is really in the end, final analysis, whether you accept Lenin's thesis on imperialism or not, and what the effect of imperialism is on the working class movement. What imperialism does, and it's been doing for over 100 years now, is that it actually engenders a split in the working class movement. The working class movement is not one cohesive unit. It's divided into two sections. A small privileged minority who benefit from the fact that imperialism is able to throw them some crumbs from its table. And they forever act as the purveyors of bourgeois ideology in the working class movement. And they are forever acting on behalf of imperialism. That on every important issue of domestic or foreign policy, they side with their own bourgeoisie. The conduct of the Labour Party is a perfectly good example of that. Labour Party is the political representative of labour aristocracy, which finds itself in high positions in the European Union. And we do, if imperialism is weakened, yes, somebody made the remark that I think Kathy made the remark that we live in an imperialist country and we benefit. Not only she's a true British-born English woman.
My condolences.
I, as a foreign worker, not even white, benefit greatly from the fact that I live in an imperialist country. Why do you think people want to come from the poor countries here? For exactly the same reason that the people of Europe went to the United States of America. There's nothing criminal about human beings trying to improve their economic conditions. Humanity, since it emerged from Africa, has moved in search of food, water, drink from one place to another. That is how the 5 continents have come to be peopled by people who originally, and there are lots of theories, whether they originated in Ethiopia or Tanzania, but one thing is true, they originated somewhere in Africa. And over a period of thousands of years, some have stayed black, some have become white, some people have curly hair, some people have straight hair. Climatic conditions have so molded them. But humanity has done that, and we're not against that. But what we really want to do is, we want to strengthen socialism. Comrades have said, in European Union, the workers can unite. It's not just European Union. Capitalism has 2 tendencies. Capitalism unites workers. As Lenin said, New York is a perfectly good example of a city that grinds people of different nationalities into Americans. And he said, what is happening in New York is happening in every large factory and capitalist enterprise. Workers of different nationalities come with all their prejudices, with their religious differences, their differences in color of skin. But in the end, when there's a strike, workers unite and actually come to know each other. It is in those conditions that capitalism tries to divide workers by saying, these blacks will take all your jobs, etc. And it is our job to fight against that kind of xenophobia. And that's what we're doing. We do not need the European Union for the workers to be strengthened. Somebody, as Comrade Harpal said, it's a good thing that there are a lot of foreign people in London. It's not just London. Every big capitalist metropolis has foreign workers. And it's not because they suddenly discovered the route to these countries. It is because capitalism integrates the economic life of the peoples. You cannot have capital going everywhere and stop the workers going there. And it's total rubbish to say that if we came out of the European Union, we wouldn't be able to go to Europe. Of course we'd be able to go to Europe. Exactly the same way the Europeans would want to, if nothing else, shop in Harrods. So, comrades, in our view, European Union is a parasitic, imperialist body which combines with the United States of America to put pressure on the working class at home, to repress the working class at home, to wage war against oppressed nations all over the world, and finally to fight against their rivals, whoever they may be on a given day. That is what really the war in Ukraine is about. That's what the trouble in the South China Sea is, and we should be able to see through it and not actually fall for lovely phrases that the Social Democrats as well as the conservatives make about, we are internationalists and only the xenophobes oppose it. Yes, xenophobes oppose it, but we're not xenophobes. Sometimes there can be completely different reasons that you find in a different company. We were marching on 1st of May in London, but Jeremy Corbyn was there. Does it bring a coincidence of interest? Not at all. We were glad that he was there. It's the first time that somebody from the Labour Party, bigwig, has come to address a May Day rally in 50 years. We're happy with that. If Jeremy is doing it, good luck to him. We're not opposed to that. But his whole party is aghast that he would actually associate with the workers. They want the working class votes, but they don't want working class rights. They don't want working class politics. They don't want proletarian internationalism. All these people, the remarks have been made about Ken Livingstone. Ken Livingstone's formulations were wrong, but the point he was making was not wrong. There's a complete coincidence of policy and ideology between fascism and Zionism. Zionists, Hitlerite said, Jews don't belong in Europe, although they lived here for 1800 years in different countries, mainly Poland, mainly Russia and Germany. These were the three big centers. And what do the Zionists say? Jews don't belong here. And that was the basis of the agreement between Zionism and Hitlerite fascism. And people should not be allowed to intimidate us into hiding that. Yes, of course, the language of Ken Livingstone, that Hitler was a Zionist, is not a language that I would use. But he is Zionist in the sense that Jews don't belong here. Jews belong in Palestine, right? So if the definition of Zionism is that, then Hitler certainly qualified to become at least an honorary member of the Zionist Society of Theodor Herzl. But, we must actually stand for the rights of the oppressed people, be they in Palestine, be they in Africa, be they in Asia, be they anywhere else. Unless we actually have that internationalist perspective, we are not worthy of being counted as communists. We as communists are not worth a farthing, in which case we might as well pack up our bag and watch every evening The Life of Brian and enjoy ourselves. There's no need to spend all this time. Thank you for listening to me, but I'll take more contributions.
You see, home is where the heart is. I pray you can relate to my views and my struggles. They took my home and they reduced it to rubble. Nobody cares and no one will help us. Then they wonder why we're going to their cities and we're blowing ourselves up. They're acting like we're killing them. They're killing us harder. They couldn't imagine what life's like. Living in Gaza, inshallah. With my life I can give you a martyr. Too young to understand.